first hour that you spend with your textbook or nonfiction book is the most important hour because our minds are amazing. So I'd like to model for you what happens in that first hour that can literally save you hours and hours of studying. Have you ever noticed when you go to class, there are some people who made it through maybe a tenth of the reading assignment and other people covered the entire reading assignment and were able to retain all of the information? Well, this scholar skill is what makes that difference. So your first hour with a textbook is simple. And some people want to skip this step. They want to dive right into the first chapter, right into the first reading assignment. Maybe they gave themselves the assignment because they bought a book that they're interested in, they want to read it. Or maybe they're in school and they were given an assignment. And that's the worst mistake you can make, is just jump right to the first chapter and start reading. Here's why. Our minds make automatic filing systems. So if the first 15 minutes that you spend with a nonfiction book, or the first hour that you spend with your textbook is spent correctly, then your mind has already gone through and looked at all of the information and created a space to plug it in. So here's what happens. This book right here is called Mathematical Tools for the Real World. My son and my daughter both took a class at college, and this was their textbook, and I wanted my 17-year-old to go through this book. We homeschool, and her first assignment was to take an hour doing what I'm about to teach you. I taught her to go to the table of contents. Sometimes we like to skip the table of contents, but remember, the table of contents and going through it gives our mind the capacity to create that filing system. So here I come in the table of contents and I read everything that's bolded. First of all, I understand that part 1 is going to be about logic and problem solving and thinking critically. It's going to talk about approaches to problem solving, and then part 2 is going to be quantitative information in everyday life, numbers in the real world. This is kind of interesting, actually. Uses and abuses of percentages, putting numbers in perspective, dealing with uncertainty, index numbers. Okay, let's go on. Then there's managing money. You can see in this chapter why I wanted my daughter to read this. It talks about student loans, taking control of your finances, the power of compounding, using technology, savings plans and investments, loan payments, credit cards and mortgages, income taxes, understanding the federal budget. Part 3 is about probability and statistics, cell phones and driving, statistical reasoning, putting statistics to work, living with the odds of probability. Part 4 is about modeling. And part 5 is about mathematics and the arts. Okay, so once you understand where the book is headed, and even if you don't think you totally get it because you don't have all the vocabulary yet, that's okay. You just look at it, you let your brain pick up what it picks up, you let it wonder about the things it doesn't know, and that is healthy, that is right. So maybe my daughter didn't know what statistics were. So her brain might be thinking, I don't even know what statistical reasoning is. That's okay. But maybe she has heard me talk about managing money. So there's something in there that she can hook onto. Either way, she then learns to go to the first chapter and start one chapter at a time, reading every picture. So here there's a comic in here. And especially to pay attention to any vocabulary words. Make sure she slows down for just a second to pick up a vocabulary word. So she goes along in here, she reads anything that's bolded. What is a quantitative literacy? Quantitative reasoning and culture. She reads this bold quote right here by Maya Angelou. Quantitative reasoning in the workforce. She keeps going. Anything that stands out to her, she can slow down, read it for a minute, understand the picture, understand the graph, or if she's interested in something, she can slow down a little bit. Really, she's kind of skimming, and I give her permission to skim. Skim, 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 I tell her. Let your subconscious do the work of this first hour. So here she goes along. she gets to a comic again, and of course she's going to slow down and read it. That's what's nice about textbooks, is there are usually things that stand out that might be pictures or graphs that actually have visual helps that make you understand the concept. So that's how she spends her first hour in her textbook. Let me show you how it works, even if it's not a textbook. This is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, one of my favorite authors. So I find out what the gist of the book is. You know, my friends laugh at me, my family laughs at me, because I might go into someone's house, my sisters or friends, and they always have books lying around. People just like books, they have books lying around, and I can't help but picking up the book. And I might spend 5 or 10 minutes with it and then start conversing with whoever's house I'm at about the book. And they're floored that in 5 or 10 minutes, I got all the nuggets out of the book, or at least some very meaningful nuggets. And they're like, how did you do that? I've been reading that for a long time, and I haven't even got that part out of it yet. Well, let me show you how I do it. So the tipping point, I need to understand what it's about. How little things can make a big difference. Okay, how little things can make a big difference. I still don't have a lot of context yet. I see who he dedicated it to his parents. And then I go to the table of contents once again. Introduction. 1, the 3 rules of epidemics. Okay, epidemics. I have to think for a minute, what's an epidemic? If I know what an epidemic is, I can move on. If I don't know what an epidemic is and I want to, I can pull out my phone and say, Siri, what's an epidemic? But I know what an epidemic is. So number 2, the law of the few. Connectors, mavens, and salesmen. All right, well, I already have an idea of what a connector is. I don't know what a maven is because I haven't read the book yet. And salesman, I have a negative feeling toward salesmen. I notice that inside myself. And I notice my assumptions and I say, that's funny. I wonder if he'll be able to change my mind. Then 3, the stickiness factor. That's kind of cool. I'm excited to read what the stickiness factor is. Sesame Street, Blue's Clues, and the Educational Virus. You know, I'm going to jump to page 89 right now as soon as I'm done going through the table of contents, and I'm going to go see what the stickiness factor is, just because I feel like it and because that was interesting to me. 4, the power of context. 5, the power of context, again, part 2. 6, case studies, rumors, sneakers, and the power of translation. Okay, that's interesting to me too. Rumors and sneakers, how do those go together? 7, case studies, suicide, smoking, and the search for the unsticky cigarette. Already I'm thinking if I pick this up at my sister's house, I'm going to borrow this book because I'm going to read the whole thing. Or I'll just go and order it on Amazon. 8, conclusion, focus, test, and believe. Afterward, the tipping point, lessons for the real world, and notes, acknowledgments. Okay, so remember I'm still at my sister's house and I only have 5 minutes left with this book, and I want to find out about, let's see, what was it? Page 89, I remember that, the stickiness factor. So I go through this, I go over to page 89, stickiness factor, and I start to read. It's okay, my sister's busy with her kids for a minute, so I actually get to spend a few minutes in this. I don't really read this fast. It takes me at least 2 minutes a page generally, but I spend 5 or 10 minutes in here and I'm pulled in. I want to read this whole book, and I even have something to talk to my sister about if she made it that far. Either way, when this book arrives at my home and it's time for me to read it, I already am excited and my brain already knows where it's headed and where I'm headed. And it helps me to be able to get through the information in this book just because I spent 10 minutes doing the simple thing of understanding where it's headed. All right, let's take another math book. I didn't mean to grab math books today. I guess we're just on one. This one's The Life of Fred. This was really interesting when I got this. A friend recommended it. So Life of Fred, fractions. She already told me that this was a curriculum that she enjoyed using with her children and to teach them math. So note to students, this is the story of one day in Fred's life. Ooh, that sounds kind of interesting. Plus the picture here is interesting. Okay, a note to teachers. Lots of pictures. I'm excited. I might actually slow down and read this whole thing. Aha, table of contents. This is where I'm headed. Let's see what my son will be going through if I choose to use this for his math. Okay, chapter 1, less than, the symbol. When to write in a book. Ooh, I already like this book. He's given me permission to write in it. That's a very important scholar skill. Write in your books. The symbol greater than. Chapter 2, a billion, a million, onomatopoeic words, minutes to hours to days to years. Chapter 3, cardinal and ordinal numbers, inches to feet to yards, writing numbers. Chapter 4, diameter and radius. Chapter 5, Fred's budget, hyperbole, savings and expenses. Okay, so I go through. I realized my son would be learning fractions, comparing fractions, reducing fractions, adding and reducing, subtracting fractions with similar denominators, common denominators, Roman numerals, adding fractions. Fractions means divide. Okay, least common multiple. I can see where my son will head if we use this book. I know exactly what's going to happen. But remember, I still want to know a little more, so I'm going to take a few minutes and do what I taught you about this college textbook. I'm going to look through here and see. This is interesting. This is a different kind of math book than I've ever seen. Look at these pictures. Oh, look, Fred's only 5 years old, and he's a genius. Wow, I've got a good feel for this book already, and I've only spent less than 5 or 10 minutes with it. And I can decide and introduce this to my son and see if this could inspire him. Okay, so this is one scholar skill in reading. I'll be sharing a few more about how to read and the scholar skills that it entails.